breaking news from Northwest Cable News.
Good afternoon, I'm Cam Johnson. We are getting breaking news from British Columbia that Luna, the wayward whale, has broken free from a net pen that earlier we reported that the Department of Fisheries in Canada had captured Luna and put him in. And now we are getting word that Luna has broken free. We have just gotten this word minutes ago from BCTV and some other news sources. We want to go right now to Michael Harris of the Orca Conservancy. Michael, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So your reaction to this news?
Well, I'm sorry. I'm kind of laughing a little bit. What a wily little sea wolf this is. This Luna. What an episode. This is never a dull moment up there, huh?
Are you worried at all that this is going to get to be kind of like a free willy, this is going to take on kind of a free willy meaning, and that people are going to start sympathizing now with the whale to break free and to break free from its captors?
Well, I'm laughing, but I'm certainly not sympathizing with this. And but I will tell you this, that it should have never got to the point where we have black hats and white hats. Cowboys and Indians, if you will. I mean, Wranglers and First Nations. It's just gotten to a point where there's so much hostility and so much war on the water. It should never have gotten to this point, and we never had this problem during the Springer project. And I'll remind everybody that it originated with NOAA Fisheries and on the U.S. side, who did all of this sort of the capture and the translocation stuff, and it went pretty smoothly. But this has turned into chaos up there.
Are you familiar with the type of net pen that they were going to be holding Luna in?
Yeah, somewhat familiar. It's a smaller pen than was used at Manchester for Springer. It also doesn't have, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of differences actually between the two sea pens, but and it's, like I said, it's smaller. It's a smaller sea pen.
Can you tell us anything about the plan, what the plan was in terms of trying to lure Luna into the net pen? Was there any kind of containment along the way, or would the trap only close once Luna got into that net pen?
Well, presumably, based on what the plan that was released, the whole idea was to lead Luna into this sea pen, draw up the net at some point, and do a blood draw immediately, so that blood can be shipped to Oklahoma for testing, just to make sure that he doesn't have any viruses or anything that might pose a threat to the population down here. So, and apparently it's going off plans here. So who knows what's going on up there?
Would it be difficult, do you think, for a whale to get out of this pen?
We're still getting information about what exactly happened. We're not even sure if it was a breakout or if somebody left the door open and then he just swam out. The one thing we do know about orcas, it's kind of unusual about them, is they don't do the Willy trick. Everybody saw the Free Willy movie where Willy jumps over the seawall. Orcas, for some reason, have this tendency not to jump over sea pens or not to jump over any kind of nets. And during the capture era, for example, you look at old film of the captures and you say, why don't they just jump over the sea net and swim away? For some reason, they don't do that, and I guess we're not sure why. So, and he's been so docile. I was surprised that if he did make a breakout, who knows? He's full of surprises, that whale.
But your hope still is for Luna to be reunited with his family. Can you talk about your opinion on the importance of that?
Absolutely. Well, you've got an endangered population. There's 83 whales in the population. You have an opportunity to put one whale back into a population of 83 that is endangered and on the road to extinction. So biologically, yeah, it'd be a great thing to put Luna back into the population. And L pod is, very short of breeding age male, so it'd be great to grow that whale up and grow them into reproductive age and then start having little orcas in the southern resident community. So we looked at it biologically, but you know what? Admittedly, we have our own agenda, and our agenda doesn't always coincide with the First Nations agenda. They would much prefer Luna to be where he is and remain where he is, and in the very least, make a decision on his own to go out and join his family, or to follow a boat out and join his family, but certainly not to be wrangled into a net. And I'm hearing this, Cam, we're talking about this exclusionary zone, and I just shake my head thinking, how can you tell the people that have been there 4,300 years that you're not allowed to go certain places in your territory? I can see where Chief McQuina would have a lot of problems with that.
The First Nations tribe you're talking about is the Moachut Muchlut, and
Right.
I have talked to one of their chiefs.
Right.
And we should point out that they believe that Luna is the reincarnation of their recently deceased chief.
Yep.
And they believed, you know, when they talked about this capture and taking, reuniting Luna back with its family, when we talked, they sounded very sincere that they were deeply concerned about the interests for this whale. They thought that the whale could very easily be harmed in this capture.
Oh, certainly. There's got to be a giant handle with care associated with this, and I certainly hope they're doing that. But you know what? Some of the things that they have planned and have put forth in this plan are not careful, to be honest with you. I mean, one of the things that they could have done but chose not to do, for example, was to take an in situ blood draw, which means to draw the blood while the orca's in the water. And you're seeing pictures right now of the Mauchut out there caressing and petting and doing all of these things. I mean, it's not that difficult to draw the blood while he's in the water, and that means that eliminates the time that he needs to stay in the sea pen in Nootka Sound, in which they're talking about a week now at best to get that blood turned around from Oklahoma. So that's one thing that they could have done to reduce as the Mauchut see as a disrespect to Sukhit, but they chose not to for some reason. We can't figure out why they chose not to, so that's frustrating. Other things, a lot of people involved with this or even spectating this thought, and a lot of experts said, send them by water. Send them via a boat ride like Springer.
Which is what happened with Springer.
Exactly right with Springer. And they said, well, there's a lot of pitch out there. It's pretty rough waters, and the crew might get seasick. Well, orcas don't get seasick, and it's actually a much less traumatic transport for an orca rather than a truck ride, rather than a 12-hour truck ride. Mm-hmm. So there are some things, obviously, we don't agree with a lot of the plan, but I think that the key thing that we are frustrated about was just the lack of proper, respectful conversation and engagement with the First Nations. And I sound like I'm just saying the same thing over and over again, but it's true. We talked about this a year ago. We saw the gathering storm.
Michael, can you stand by for just one second?
Absolutely.
We want to let our viewers know that we're going to be taking your phone calls as well. We'd like to get your reaction to the latest news that Luna has somehow escaped the net pen that he was being held in. And Michael, explain to me, was the net pen in Gold River or was it in Nootka Sound?
It's a pretty fuzzy details coming from up there. It's hard to get information from a war zone, trust me.
Right.
But what I have heard is and what observers have sent back, the information we've got back, was that it may have happened away from the dock at Gold River, and that maybe in a seine, and that potentially there was a soft rope used, like used with Springer. But you know what? There is no such thing as a soft rope when it comes to orcas. Any kind of rope is not going to be soft. He was wrangled, it sounds like, and if he made a break, then who knows what that means? They could just, from what I hear, he's not gone too far away from the sea pen, so it may just be a matter of just coaxing him back in. But he's a very smart whale. You got to be smart when you survive for that long, a social creature and as a solitary animal.
So
you got to have some smarts.
Once again, we're taking our viewers' phone calls. We want to hear from you as well as we continue to talk to Michael Harris of the Orca Conservancy. The number to call is 1-800-305-NWCN if you'd like to talk live on the air and share your opinion now about, okay, now Luna has broken free. Does this clinch it for some of you that we should let Luna be, or are you more determined than ever that Luna should be reunited with his family? And I don't know if the calls are coming in yet. I need to hear from my producer in just a moment. But Michael, I do want to ask you, doesn't this make it even less likely the next time that Luna is going to be trusting enough to get close to a rope or the net pen?
That's an interesting argument that's been made with the team, that any sort of invasive or uncomfortable sort of component of this plan will actually be a good thing, because that'll make Luna less, acclimated to human beings and more prone to get the heck away from them on the other end, on the post-release side. And I don't know.
But first you have to catch him.
Well, yeah, you have to catch him, of course, but that's one of the things that's a process that's been going on for a while. Now, when we see Luna, cozying up to these canoes and feeling so comfortable around them and being so gentle around them, That's the product of the Vancouver Aquarium and the DFO team out there in the last several weeks acclimating him to the presence of boats again. So again, whereas we, for up there for the last year or two, there's been this salient message that don't even make eye contact with the whale. And if the whale approaches your boat, stay away from him. And, don't do anything like that. But that had to sort of be switched back to the other side. And they had to start engaging him and started doing that in order to make it a smooth operation leading him in.
Okay, Michael, stand by for just a moment, if you will.
Sure.
Tammy in Auburn, a viewer calling tonight. Tammy, what do you think? You're hearing this news with the rest of us that Luna has escaped capture. What are your thoughts?
I think they need to leave Luna alone. That's telling you something. Luna does not want to be pinned in. He wants to be free.
What do you think, Michael? Luna wants to be free. Michael Harris? Okay, do we have another caller to go to?
Go ahead. Restrained or captured.
Tony in Federal Way. Tony, what are your thoughts?
First of all, you got to be smarter than the animal. It's like trying to train cats. Hello. But the whole thing, they wanted to take him up to get him back with his family. Fine, get him up there, let him loose, then leave him alone. If he wants to come back, he comes back. Plus, you see all these people handling him, touching him. Human beings are natural bacteria farms. We're going to wind up making this poor animal sick. And what other people don't realize, it is normal for male animals to leave their families. Lions, bears, wolves, everything. So there's no inbreeding. It's normal for them to leave. Let him alone.
Let me ask Michael for clarification on that. Is it, Michael, normal for male orcas to leave the herd at some point?
The herd? No, it's not. And as a matter of fact, this is the most intensively studied marine mammal population in the world. And for 30 years, there's only been 2 cases of solitary orcas that just show up, apart from their natal pods. And
doesn't inbreeding become a problem?
What's that?
Doesn't inbreeding become a problem?
Certainly. I mean, that's a big concern with the southern residents is inbreeding. But
so maybe so some people would say maybe this is nature kind of taking care of that problem by giving one the urge to break off and possibly join another herd.
It's entirely new science. This is an entirely new chapter. The solitary social orca, resident orca, fish-eating orca. It's a very, very new science, and we're writing a textbook every single day, so we don't know. Okay. I think that's the bottom line. We would say that there's got to be a reason. Maybe he followed his uncle into Nootka Sound because his uncle was known to have passed away around that time, and he just took a wrong turn. Maybe he is the soul of Chief Ambrose McQuina, who, by the way, before he passed away, said, I want to come back as a kukuan. I want to come back as an orca, and I will come back as an orca. And a week later, Luna showed up in Nootka Sound. So we don't know.
Right.
We don't know.
Okay, Michael, thanks so much. Stand by once again. Sandy from Bonnie Lake. Sandy, your thoughts tonight?
Hi. Yes, I'm just really offended when I see the Native Americans touching the animal. We're not allowed to, as Americans, to touch the animals, just for that one lady said about the bacteria that we bring on. They have the bacteria, on their skin too, and they're touching this animal, and it's just unfair. And like I say, take them up there. Don't truck them, but fly them up there, or however you do it, boat them up there. Drop them off, give them all the advantages to reunite with his own kind, his pod, and let the animal be. Why are we trying to claim something that is naturally wild?
Okay, thank you so much for your phone call, Sandy. We appreciate it. Dennis in Clinton, Oregon. What are your thoughts tonight, Dennis?
I think they should leave the poor orca alone. Let him go back to his own pod.
How's he going to find his way back?
They're pretty smart animals.
He hasn't found his way yet, but you have confidence.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'd like to take this time to introduce my co-anchor, Dean Staley, to join me in this effort to try to bring you the story, even though we have sketchy details at this point, that Luna has somehow escaped his captors in the Nootka Sound area. We're also joined by Michael Harris of the Orca Conservancy, who's on the phone, and we're taking our viewer calls as well.
And just to bring everyone up to speed, the history of Luna, it was back in 2001 that, of course, he left his pod. Later found his way to the Nootka Sound, where he has become increasingly familiar and friendly with people, rubbing himself against boats, hanging out in the Gold River area on the west side of Vancouver Island. And it is only recently that the plan to reunite Luna with his pod was finally put into effect. Conservancy officials in Canada working very hard to capture Luna and bring Luna in a place, this net pen that you're now looking at, to lure him in there. The plan, of course, was to keep him in that pen for a short time while they did medical tests to make sure that he didn't have any diseases that he might communicate to his pod. And then, of course, after he was deemed healthy, he was to be driven 200 miles south in a bay near Victoria, at which time they were going to hold him in another pen and wait for his pod to approach that area and then release him back into the wild and hope that they could lure him back toward his pod to be reunited. Of course, the big news of the day was that he was captured and now apparently has escaped.
And what we don't know is how this affects now the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the Canadian agency's plans from this point on. Do they just try to capture them all over again today, tomorrow, a week from now? What do they do? Do they go back to the drawing board and figure out a different plan? As Michael Harris of the Orca Conservancy has alluded to, it's very difficult right now to get information out of Canada because they're dealing with a situation on their hands, and part of that is a public relations situation too. Let's hear what the public has to say. Is it Dean or Steve in Federal Way? Steve in Federal Way, what do you think? Steve, can you hear me? Let's go to Lee in Seattle. Lee, what are your thoughts tonight about Luna escaping? Okay, one more try. John.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. This story really bothers me, and it did with the first, with the other Orca too.
Springer.
And what I've been noticing between Luna and Springer is marine biologists seem to think that they know how to manage nature when nature knows how to take care of itself. You asked the one gentleman who said that Luna would find his own pod. You said, well, how's he going to get there? And, well, he made a comment, he didn't elaborate on it. He said that they are very smart. Mm-hmm. They speak by sonar. Sonar travels for miles and miles and miles underwater. Mm-hmm. We use it in our submarines. You know, they have a form of communication. I believe that either he left his pod or his pod left him behind for whatever reason. But nature takes care of itself, and it's just really disgusting to just watch scientists and marine biologists and scientists think that they know what's best for a wild animal.
Let me play devil's advocate here, Steve, because you raise a really good argument. But another argument on the other side would be, you know, nature is being interfered with all the time. You talk about sonar. Yes, the Navy is using sonar, and it's interfering with these orcas and their ability to think in the ocean. There's pollution. There are all kinds of things that are breaking down these pods.
Absolutely.
So should we lend these pods a helping hand after interfering with them already with our pollution and with our sonar?
I think it's within our own human nature to want to help everybody and anything. But, I mean, where does it stop? Mm-hmm. You know, does it get to the point where if a mother whale is having a hard time giving birth, do we get an OBGYN in there and have it give birth for it? Or
Good point.
I do understand, you know, that our being on this earth does hamper their surroundings. The one woman that called a few calls ago mentioned how she was appalled by the Indians allowed to touch the animal. Well, you know, bacteria, I mean, like you said, hey, we dump our garbage in the ocean. If that doesn't create bacterias and stuff like that, I don't know what will. So I don't, you know, let the Indians do, you know, what they believe in. And to touch the animal, I would love to do that. I would love to get the opportunity. I'm watching them doing it and thinking, my gosh, how awesome that would be to be that close to something like that.
All right, Steve, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts tonight.
Also on the line this afternoon, we have Sandy, who I believe is calling from Bonnie Lake. Sandy? Sandy, are you there?
Michael, do you have any, let's talk to Michael Harris with the Orca Conservancy. Your reaction to some of the things you've been hearing from our callers?
Well, I think Steve, your last caller, was, I think he nailed it. Right? You know, that's a good presumption, a good assumption to begin with, which is, you know, don't mess with nature. I mean, nature sort of knows what's going on. It knows what it's doing, and these orcas generally know what they're doing. The problem that we had was that this orca was in a place where he was not going to be left alone. As a matter of fact, we had horrible reports. We had people about going out in the dead of night and pouring beer down his throat and just having this sort of this Shamu experience out there. So nature wasn't allowed to be left alone. And then, and then you get people who have commercial interests in the whale. The marine park industry said, wow, here's an opportunity. It's very controversial to go out and capture animals out of wild populations, but this one is solitary. This one's alone. This one's in this remote area.
So SeaWorld might want to come in and take Luna.
Oh, this is at least a $3, $4, $5 million whale on the market. I mean, this is a southern resident community stock. We have not, SeaWorld and the marine parks have not had this in their breeding program, this genetic stock, for over 25 years because, frankly, the community ran them out of Puget Sound and Canadian waters. And they had to go to Iceland and elsewhere to try to capture whales. So this is a very, very expensive whale, very valuable whale. So you had all these competing human interests, and and like Steve pointed out, I mean, we all have this sort of this inclination to try to help. We see an animal that looks abandoned on a beach, maybe a seal pup or something. We want to help it find its mother, and those are good instincts, but those are usually bad instincts. Usually, if we should just leave wild animals alone. But in this case, we had a couple exceptional situations.
So if everyone had been willing to just leave Luna alone, that would have been okay with you and other whale organizations to just leave Luna alone?
Well, to be honest with you, Cam, I knew about Luna up in Nootka Sound for months and months and months. And as you know, I usually like to talk. So, I mean, it was really difficult for me to basically keep that quiet, and a lot of us to keep that quiet. We wanted to let Luna get every chance in the world to make his own decision and hopefully go out and just repatriate on his own. Our second choice, after we got into an untenable situation, we knew that he was a management problem. He had become basically kind of a garbage bear in a way, was to go in and say, okay, well, let's repatriate him, let's get him back with his family, but let's not do it Springer style. Okay. Let's walk him out. Let's try to do a soft introduction.
And that didn't work either.
Well, I won't say it didn't work. I don't think it was given a full chance to work. That's the problem the First Nations have as well.
Okay. Michael, stand by if you would, please.
Yeah, Michael, we appreciate your thoughts. Hope you'll stay on the line with us. We have more questions for you. Right now, we want to listen, hear from Stephanie calling from Marysville. Stephanie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Your thoughts on the Luna situation?
Well, I just think it's not right of the Native Americans to interfere with what the marine biologists are trying to do, because it's obvious that the whale seems to be very lonely. I mean, he's rubbing up against the boats, that he seems very displaced, and, I think they're really concerned about his welfare. He's going to get cut or something, and I know that in the past I've seen on the news where the Native Americans are trying to catch the whales to kill them because of certain rituals they have, and I just found that a little bit contradictory to, what I was seeing today. And I think that to try to relocate the whale, as long as it's not such an expensive thing, I don't see anything wrong with it, because it's obvious he seems very lonely and in need of some type of attention, and to find his pod to get him away from trying to, keep rubbing up against the boats. And then as far as I've seen, the people aren't really supposed to be touching. Other people, I thought, would get in trouble if they touched the whales. So I see that the Native Americans are all touching them, and I thought that was against the rules that I've seen on other news things when they were showing different whales, that the people aren't supposed to touch them.
Stephanie, certainly there has been controversy and criticism of the Native Americans for doing that. We appreciate you calling in with your thoughts this afternoon. That was Stephanie calling in from Marysville.
Let's go to Craig in Kent. Craig, what are your thoughts tonight?
Well, I had a couple questions. I guess one of my questions is the fact that can't they move Luna's pod closer to Luna so that maybe Luna can actually react to the sound of hearing maybe the pod, the songs of its pod, and then let it decide whether it's going to be able to move out with its pod or stay in that area.
So you're suggesting that somehow officials try to attract the pod to Luna?
Sure, why not?
Well, let's ask Michael Harris. We have Michael Harris from the Orca Conservancy. I'm going to guess that not wanting to interfere with that pod might be part of that equation. Michael?
Yeah, well, I tell you, at the heart of that concept, it was brilliant. You know, and in fact, that was the hope of a great many of us, was that they would get an acoustic connection and do it naturally, and let the whales just reunite on their own naturally.
Has Luna ever been in, that we know of recently, acoustic range of its pod?
You know, we don't know for sure, but our best guess is no. And the problem is they have an acoustic range of about 8 to 10 miles to hear each other's calls. He has just not been within 8 to 10 miles of his pod. That's the problem. It's not just his pod, but it's the other southern resident whales. The only problem with your last caller's supposition here was that is just corralling the family and bringing them there. Believe me, if we could, we would have. We tried everything to try this natural reintroduction, and you know, we were pushing. In the end, we were pushing DFO to allow the boat follow team to lead them not just out of Nootka Sound, but down south, lead them 10, 20, 30 miles with a boat alongside, but take him to the whales instead of waiting for the whales to come to Nootka Sound.
Seems like he'd be willing to do it.
I think he would, and my hopes were, and believe me, if he is escaped and he's not going back into that sea pen, one of the maybe crazy ideas that we thought would be really, really cool was to have the First Nations walk him out of Nootka Sound, and then take legs in a journey, much like they'd be passing the Olympic torch in a way, and different bands and tribes would take over legs of the journey, and they would just walk them down the coast. We wouldn't have to do all this capture stuff and all this wrangling and soft ropes and trucks and planes, trains, and automobiles.
Michael Harris from the Orca Conservancy, thank you so much for your thoughts. If you could stand by, we would love to hear more from you. We're going to take a quick break. We're also taking your phone calls. The number's on your screen.
Yeah, please call us at 1-800-305-NWCN if you'd like to talk on the air and share your opinion about the happenings today, the very latest. Luna, the wayward whale, has been captured and has subsequently escaped from his net pen. Luna is back free this evening. Of course, we're going to be following the story all evening for you right here on Northwest Cable News. Keep it here for the very latest.